Welcome to Kaiser Watch with John Kaiser. I'm your host, Jim Goddard. John, what's coming up on the show today?
Jim, today we're going to revisit Aurion Resources, which I talked about just over a year ago, and we're going to do a couple updates on Canalaska, Uranium, and PJX Resources, both part of the 2024 favorite collection.
Is Rupert Resources still trying to acquire the 70-30 JV between B2Gold and Aurion Resources?
That is a question that people are scratching their head about. I last talked about Aurion Resources in Kaiser Watch episode June 9th of 2023, and I made the case that Finland's Central Lapland Greenstone Belt is ripe for a consolidation event. And at the time, I had Aurion as a KRO favorite. They were 70-30 partners with B2Gold on the Kutuvuomo project, and they had the 100% Risti project. And things did not actually unfold quite as I expected. And at the end of the year, I demoted them to the bottom fish collection. They had only about $5-6 million left. B2Gold seemed to have not accomplished too much on the Kutuvuomo project, and Rupert had not done anything further with regard to its Ikkari project and possibly consolidating the ground in the neighborhood. So it was interesting that on March 11th of this year, Aurion put out a press release saying that it had received notice from B2Gold that B2Gold had received a conditional offer from Rupert to purchase its 70% stake in the Kutuvuomo project for 28.6 million shares of Rupert, which at the time implied a value of $102.8 million for the 100% stake. And Aurion's 30% share would have been worth about $31 million, just about under half of its $69 million market cap at the time. And B2Gold was set to get $72 million worth of Rupert stock, for which it could have been able to sell it to some institutional party, because Rupert has got a valuation of $900 million to $1 billion for a 4 million ounce deposit that's very robust, and it's working on a pre-feasibility study at this point. But there was a hitch to this deal, and what's curious is that neither Rupert's CEO Jim Whittle nor B2Gold wanted Aurion to say anything about this offer because B2Gold had not yet accepted it, and there was no offer made to Aurion, or it would have had to disclose it to the market. But Aurion had a 60-day right of first refusal. Now that's a bit of a problem, because that meant it had to come up with $72 million to match the value of the paper that Rupert was going to issue to B2Gold. But the problem is nobody was going to give Aurion a financing, and the project itself, to acquire 100% of the Kutuvuomo, it isn't worth $100 million, because although they've spent about $44 million on the project since B2Gold first optioned it in 2015. Eventually spent $15 million to earn 70%, declined to go to a bankable feasibility study, or to go to 75% by funding a bankable feasibility study, and instead in 2022 formed a 70-30 JV. Now, what made this project interesting is that Rupert itself, the project, it had what it now calls the Ikkari. It had a former mill on the site from a former mine. There was some debris sort of left over in mineralization. It hoped to sort of rethink it and find something that would justify restarting the original operation. But in 2019, they undertook a basal till sampling program on the rest of the property, most of which is covered with glacial till, and they made a phenomenal discovery that was announced in about March 2020, and the stock went from sort of hanging around at 80-90 cents, shot up to $5-6, and they drilled off a resource of about 58 million tons of 2.18 gram per ton, and 64% of that is open pittable. And this happened around the same time that De Grey Mining in Australia's Pilbara undertook a sort of shallow auger grid drilling program, also in an area where there's all kinds of overburden and stuff covering the bedrock underneath. And they also made a fabulous discovery, and that's now clocked in at about 10.5 million tons at 1.3 grams per ton, and they call that the Hemi. Now, to make life confusing, B2Gold decided to call its mineralized zone on the Kutu-Vuomo project the Helmi zone. So Hemi is not Helmi. But the Ikkari discovery is a shear-hosted system, and it's very close to the boundary with the 70-30 JV of B2Gold and Aurion, and the structure projects sort of northwest onto the ground. And so B2Gold and Aurion have been busy drilling away. They have got interesting mineralization, gold mineralization, but despite, $44 million sunk into this project, they don't have a resource estimate yet, and sort of the scuttlebutt is that there's maybe 500,000 ounces, maybe chasing it farther to the northwest, they would find more. And B2Gold kind of lost interest in this project. Last year, it paid $1.2 billion worth of paper to acquire Sabina Gold and Silver. It's now spending 800 million Canadian to put the Back River project into production. So when they were approached by Rupert for, we'll give you $72 million worth of paper, they said, well, this is good because this project is not a priority for us. It hasn't really clicked. The real prize is Ikkari, but we've taken over something. Rupert itself is ultimately a takeover target for a gold producer. The most likely candidate is Agnico Eagle, which already owns about 28 million shares, or 14%. It operates the Katilla 5,500 ton per day underground mine in the region, and of course it's very familiar with these orogenic greenstone belt deposits. So it's an obvious candidate to wrap up the whole works. So it made sense for Rupert to take out B2Gold's position. But what really didn't make sense was the value they put on it. And the reason they put so much value on it is that in the PEA that they published last year, there was in the appendix an alternative scenario that showed that the ideal place for a tailings facility and for the plant to be located is just south of the border in the southeastern end of the Kutu-Vuomo project and just west of Orion's 100% owned Risti project. And so obviously, they weren't so much interested in the expansion potential on the 70-30 ground, but they were interested in being able to use that for infrastructure to optimize the development plan for Ikkari. And but the problem was they should have taken care of the Aurion loose end first. So when B2Gold had to notify Aurion back in March, and Aurion put out this notice that they've received this, they had the 60-day period to come up with the financing and acquire this. But of course that wasn't possible because the project wasn't worth $100 million, and nobody was going to give them $70 million in financing to relieve B2Gold of their 70% stake. So on May 9th, they admitted, we declined the right of first refusal. And then nothing happened until last week, or this week even. Rupert put out this strange news release, which basically said that it has been unable to reach acceptable terms to acquire the full 100% of the Fingold JV to consolidate further exploration licenses near to the Ikkari project. Now, when was 100% even on the table? Now, obviously, in the intervening period, they have talked to Aurion about doing some sort of deal. Now, the problem is that in the fine print of the joint venture agreement, Aurion, if they want to use part of the property for a tailings facility or that, they have to get an agreement from Aurion. And since there's nothing really in it for Aurion, it's obviously not going to get this. So they have to take out both of these companies and own it 100%. But the cryptic way they worded this news release, we have given up trying to acquire 100%, does not mean that the deal with B2Gold still isn't on the table. Nothing's been said that that can't happen. But there is a new problem that's happened, is that this right of first refusal, when they declined it, there was a deadline for B2Gold to accept the offer from Rupert and get this done. But this deadline apparently has passed, so the right of first refusal exists again. So this is a real complicated mess. Now, back in early March, gold had sort of bounced off a recent low in mid-February, and in March people were mumbling, why is gold doing so well? And eventually it turned out that there was strong Chinese buying at all levels, from the government down to civilians that were soaking up the gold. And gold made it to $2,400 and then stabilized in the $2,300 to $2,400 level. Now, the market has not really trusted this. They think this is a head fake. They don't understand really where the buying is going. And apparently in the last month, the Chinese have been absent from the market, and India, all the gold shops there are complaining that they have no customers because in nominal terms, gold is at an all-time high, and unfortunately for Indians, the rupee is at an all-time low against the U.S. dollar. So gold is more expensive than it has ever been. So these two buyers, India and China, of gold have not been in the market, but this week, gold made it back above 2,400, and it's not really clear why. Well, to me, it's quite clear what's going on. In the past couple of weeks, there have been two important developments. One was the Supreme Court ruling that pretty much the President of the United States is above the law, can do almost anything that he wishes, that violates existing rules. And this has caused a lot of consternation around the world as people realize that there are no legal constraints on what the president can authorize. So the United States has suddenly become an untrustworthy partner in everything. And the other important development was, of course, the Trump-Biden debate, which really made clear how much Biden's cognitive abilities have declined. And everybody realized if he continues to be president or the presidential nominee, Trump will win the next election. And with Trump's gang of architects who created Project 2025 and their idea of remaking the United States in conjunction with the Supreme Court that is dismantling all the guardrails of the United States, the prospect that once there's Trump's in power, he's going to strip America of its greatness, isolate it on the global stage, bring inflation into the equation through big tariffs against everybody else. The market's starting to respond to this process, and I think the interest in gold is widespread, and we're seeing the groundwork in place for gold to make a real move into the $3,000 plus range. And so this is why it's very peculiar that Rupert Resources, which has a fantastic discovery on its hands, is marching it through permitting and pre-feasibility with a scenario that is not optimal for what they want to do. And here they are dickering, trying to grind Orion and see if they can just sort of get this thing super cheap, when what they really should be doing is right now doing a fair deal. And of course, Orion, it's spent $44 million of its own money on its 100% owned Finland projects. Risti itself has sucked up $37 million. And while they find gold everywhere, high-grade gold, it so far does not hang together in a way that's going to make a mine. So ideally, I think for Orion, if they were to make an offer and take out Orion at a fair price, and again, they don't have to pay a stupid amount. What they would end up doing is consolidating the district, and then they pull in B2Gold 70% stake, and then they become a very attractive target for the Agnico Eagles of the world, for Kinross Gold, which is a partner on the Lonnie East project of Orion. And then there's others in the background who might want to take over this wonderful flagship Ikkari project expansion potential, further exploration within this central Lapland greenstone belt, which is very unexplored compared to other fertile greenstone belts in the world. And you would see Rupert go into play and take off. So right now the story is, will Rupert wake up, do a fair deal, take out Orion, consolidate everything in so the Orion shareholders end up with Rupert, and instead of Rupert sitting here at $4 waiting for, say, a $5 bid, as the gold price starts to break out in this context of all hell breaking loose on the global stage, we see it maybe end up disappearing in the $10 to $20 a share range. So that's the play with Aurion Resources right now. Orion holds the cards because otherwise, if Rupert just stalls, they can't advance the Hickory project in an ideal manner, and they may already be on the hook anyways and still have to acquire the 70% stake from B2Gold. We could probably use the cash to help with building its Back River project, which it hopes to have in production by early next year. So watch the Orion Rupert story. There could be fireworks in a short while. You're not going to get anything more than a double from Orion, but when the package is together, that becomes a wonderful package to have a stake in.
Is Canalaska's high-grade Pike uranium discovery starting to take shape in the third dimension?
Not quite yet, but on July 9th, Canalaska Uranium announced the first hole of its 9,000-meter summer drill program at West MacArthur, where it owns about 83.25% or something like that, while Cameco is diluting by not participating. And they reported 21.6 meters of 3.44%. This is EU30 radiometric reading, so final geochemical assay may end up being different. But with the work they did earlier this year, I think they have a pretty good handle on how to now properly measure these high-grade intervals. And within that was 5.4 meters of 10.9%. However, it was on the same fence of the three holes that they hit earlier in the Pike zone, and it crosses the structure. The structure is a graphitic peelite at the unconformity, and that's where you can get these very rich uranium deposit, unconformity type associated deposits. And so what this tells us now is that that zone, that structure, is at least 30 to 40 meters wide. What was amazing was when Corey Bielik had said, yeah, we're going to test this in this direction. And they actually, with the directional drilling, even though this is down at 800 meters, they managed to nail it exactly where they wanted that hole to be. So they have two rigs going. One is going to continue to probe along this fence because this structure dips to the south, and it's sort of an east-west type structure, more like northeast-southwest. And they want to see how deep into the basement the mineralization goes within this graphitic peelite zone. But the other rig will be starting to do incremental step-outs along strike, 10 to 20 meters. These are the holes that we need to see so that we can start doing back-of-the-napkin type calculations, let's say 4.75 is a specific gravity, and start seeing what sort of deposit is taking shape. And because they have the ability to do these radiometric readings in the field, we should be, assuming they're intersecting it, we should now start getting a regular flow of such updates. Of course, if we don't get a regular flow of updates, that means they're not hitting it. So we cross our fingers that there's going to be a series of similar news releases as they step along the strike of the structure and start to delineate this Pike discovery in the third dimension.
When do you think PJX Resources will start drilling its Sullivan 2 target?
That John Keating started the modification of the existing drill permit at that Dewdney Trail in southeast British Columbia 9 months ago. And when I talked to him, well, how long is this going to take? He said, we should have this by March, April or so, May. We can't drill until mid-June anyways, so it's not necessary. Well, it was like July, a week ago or so, and we still hadn't heard anything. And the market was starting to get worried. The stock had sagged back below 30 cents after jumping up 33 cent range after Crescat came on board and gave them an extra $3 million. And of course, these days you have the regulators with all their environmental issues, and then you have the First Nations, multiple groups that need to be consulted, and this goes round and round in circles. And we're starting to worry, okay, there's some group in there which is not cooperating, and this drill permit will never be issued because everybody needs to cooperate. But on July 8th, they put out a press release. A 5-year drill permit has been granted. It is not just one for 1 or 2 drill pad locations, such as, say, Arizona Gold got for its Philadelphia project from the BLM. This will allow them, if they have a discovery and they're going to shoot for the SEDEX-type target first, they will be able to keep drilling. When exactly they will be drilling, when I talked to John Keating, he hedged on that. He thinks that definitely by the end of July, they'll have the platforms built and the rigs on the platforms drilling away. Right now, he's got the crews in the field. They are continuing the prospecting that they were doing last year, because remember, this was a fairly late in the season prospecting discovery when they found these boulders in the talus at the slope of a mountain. That, wow, these have textures of a marine setting, exhalative type, massive sulfide zinc lead silver. This is not just some vein type massive sulfide mineralization like the old Estrella mine nearby, vein mine. This is the real thing. This is Sullivan 2. Now, is it going to have the same scale as Sullivan 1, 150 million plus tons? We don't know, but the setting's large enough. The magnetic anomaly that's hopefully caused by pyrrhotite associated with this type of deposit, it's large enough to have that sort of scale. But the serendipity part about all this was that they weren't even really looking for SEDEX system, because on this mountain there was this cyanite, what they thought was an intrusion that could have potential for much younger copper gold type mineralization. And they now know that this cyanite is actually a dike sheet that has managed to come up sort of perpendicular to the stratigraphy, the layer cake of that would have hosted the 1.5 billion-year-old SEDEX mineralization, and kind of like a cloak shielded it. But here and there, erosion had created windows from which obviously this mineralization had managed to spill out and ended up in the talus pile at the bottom. So they've got their people sort of scrambling up the slopes, trying to find out where exactly this came from. They did find peripheral outcrop to the northwest. It's more distal to the main system because it doesn't have the magnetic qualities that the boulders in the talus field have. But by the end of August, we should know if we have a new Sullivan 2 discovery on our hands that starts to scale big. Sure, there's things that can still go wrong, because if we had the cyanide intrusion come up here, who knows what else might be behind the scenes, displacing the original system. So the market has, now that the permitting risk is gone, has decided, okay, let's worry about the next thing, that this will be a disappointment, that it will not be a discovery. And that, of course, is the nature of this glass half empty, draining to empty psychology that is haunting the junior resource sector.
John, thanks for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been talking with John Kaiser. I'm Jim Goddard. Comments made on Kaiser Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as a recommendation to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at kaiserresearch.com.